You're asleep. You wake up. By using your cell phone as an alarm, you check your messages, you get undressed, you get in the shower, you get dressed, you've got 3 more things done there. You hug the spouse, you walk the dog, you have breakfast with the kids if you've got kids that are young, you send them off to school. Checking your BlackBerry again, you get in your car and you drive to work while listening to messages, checking that smartphone, guzzling coffee, and you're on the phone with perhaps a SWAT conference call. You're dealing with that. You get to work, you're checking your emails. They're all marked urgent, of course. But as Troy said, you've been CC'd on them all, so you're just deleting them. You're back at your desk, you're on the phone, your boss calls and they want an update, a status update. You're thinking, not right now, I'm in the midst. You're back at your desk, you're on the phone, you're checking your emails, you're talking to your wife or your son. And then, oh my gosh, I've been looking at your acronyms. You've got the AWT, the NOC, the RTO, and the ECO. You got the BCP and the COB. You got the MTTR, the FCCR, and the DR. You got the ITSM, the SAS, the ITIL, and the clouds. And that's not all. Then you've got smartphones and software and status updates and seamless workflow. You've got incident management and IT, automation and application. You've got panic processes and plans, incidents in the queue. And if you're in IT, people are giving you a spindle of blank DVDRs because they think you want them. Are you crazy? Someone from your team wants to use your relevance engine for fun. And you're going through the day, and finally at the end of the day, if you're lucky, you change your clothes and you get to the gym, and then you've got the bicycle, the treadmill, Pilates. If you're a guy, you're trying to get bigger. If you're a lady, you're trying to get smaller, bigger, smaller, bigger, smaller. You check yourself out in the mirror, you're tweeting, Facebooking, posting, LinkedIn. Then you go home, you pick up dog food and cat food and groceries, and you put them away, 3 more things done. You have the spouse, you walk the dog, you do it with the kids, you send the kid up to bed, you change your clothes, you get in bed, you channel surf, you call your friend, you read your book on spirituality. Then you check your BlackBerry 1 more time. You deal with an emergency call, the thing is vibrating, you're dealing with that, your wife is upset, your husband's upset, and then you go to sleep. That was a good day. And that's just Sunday. So what does this mean if our lives are like this? We are crazy busy. And the question becomes, among this crazy busyness, what's relevant? How do you find what's relevant? And that's what X Matters is all about. But we get caught up in the crazy business, and so for so many of us in cultures today, just being busy is a sign of status. It doesn't matter what you're doing, it just matters that you're busy. So people compete over it, and we get addicted to it, and we feel wrong if we're not completely in a panic and on that conveyor belt. So you see people having these conversations. I hear them all the time. I ask someone how they're doing invariably. 95% of the time, the response is, good, I'm really busy. Like, that's a bragging thing. How you doing? Good, I'm really busy. Yeah, I know what you mean, I'm so busy too. It's crazy, I'm totally crazy. People call themselves crazy, and they brag about it. I'm crazy busy. Oh, I know what you mean, I'm so crazy busy. Yes, I had 800 tickets open. Really? I had 1,800 tickets open. And it goes back and forth. People compete over who sleeps the least. You have friends who do that, they come up and they brag about how little sleep they got. There's no gold medal at the end of life for who slept less. But people love to brag about it. I only slept 3 hours last night. I'm tired. Here's what you say to those people. Oh, that's too bad. I haven't slept since I was 6. So here you are, you're working and you're running and you're crazy and you're busy, and these words that we use in our culture without thinking, like crazy and busy and work and run, they define your thinking, and that thinking defines your life. Gotta work out, gotta work on my relationship, gotta run. I'm running at the time, gotta run the errands, gotta run the program. And these are embedded in our worlds. Now, I lived in Africa for a while, in Ghana, in West Africa. And in Ghana, there is no linear sense of time. In West Africa, time is still. And that's reflected in the language. There's either now, the language for that is egbe, or the other language is not now, and cho. So it's either egbe or not now, and cho. So their sense of time is either present or just not present. And I think we can embed that into the culture here. How do you be completely present? And then how do you plan for the future, but in a present way so that you're not living out of time? This is very Zen. And it's how you stop time, by being so present. Because it's not about getting off the conveyor belt, because I don't think we can. But it's about being on the conveyor belt so completely present in each and every moment that time doesn't feel stressed. So how do we get off this conveyor belt? How do we get out of the mentality? Because the truth is, nobody wants a crazy busy IT person, or a help desk support person, or business continuity manager. Nobody wants a crazy busy parent. Your kids don't want that from you. Your colleagues don't want that from you. And your clients don't want that from you. And though we brag about being crazy busy to look that we're important, it makes us look smaller, because it makes us look out of control. As I like to say, being crazy busy is a sign of chaos, not clarity. And it's actually a sign of vanity, like you want the attention, and it's not a sign of vision. It's a sign of limitation, not leadership. And so my challenge to you is, how do you not use that language? And how do you use the language of a leader, of a visionary, of someone who is so present in time that people are drawn to you? If you could stop time for someone for 5 seconds, or 5 minutes, or 5 hours, you've done them a great service. And I think the best products and service do that. Bob Dylan said the purpose of art is to stop time. And being an artist, my background as a performing artist and a visual artist, I think that's true. If you think about a great painting or a great comedy show, you go to a club and you're out of time. You see a great movie, you watch TV, time stops. It's why we do these things. It's why people drink. It's why people go to entertainment, because it takes you off the crazy busy conveyor belt. All of a sudden, you're out of time. So if art stops time, then the question becomes, how do you turn your business into an art? And I think that's really possible. So we'll look at ways to do that today. X Matters as a company, I think, gives you a huge edge because they focus you. They help you focus on what matters. They take the pressure off and they save you time so that 14 of you aren't waiting for the 15th person to join the conference call. So if you have that extra time, because 14 of you are now free, because you're not required to be present for that call, what are you going to do with that extra time? More tweets, more Facebook postings, more busyness? Or could you take that extra time to do something that really matters? Maybe you send a text to your spouse saying, just wanted you to notice thinking of you. Maybe you find a creative way to make up for the fact that you missed your kid's soccer match because you were dealing with a crisis. When we can save time, when we can stop time, then you want to make sure that the time saved is used for something valuable. And if you're still at work, maybe that's to really connect, to truly connect with your customers, to make that communication come alive. So we're going to look at 3 techniques about stopping time. And these techniques are based around the image of a prism. If you were to imagine a gigantic triangular prism, and then you were to imagine this white light beaming through the prism, what happens is as it goes through that prism, it refracts, it bends. And through that refraction, your eye sees color. The extraordinary thing about the prism that we all take for granted is that all those colors already exist in white light, but we don't see them. The combination of colors creates clarity, it creates that white light, which is mind-boggling. It doesn't create darkness, it creates clarity. That white light, in my view, in my terminology, is something I call the through line. And the through line is why you do what you do. When you have that through line clear, all the colors, and we'll talk about what the colors mean, essentially they're your skills, and your talents, and your gifts, your unique prism that represents you. All of those are harnessed towards that white through line. They are all beamed back through the prism to produce that pure beam of light. And conversely, when you're clear on your through line, whatever that is for you, why you do what you do, why are you in this job? Because there are many jobs you could have taken. There are many jobs, but you chose this one. And when you're performing at your best, you've reconnected with why you're doing it. You're not just on the conveyor belt going through the details and the duties and the dabs and the deadlines. the incidents and the tickets. You're dealing with why you do what you do. That through line, when you bend it properly through your prism, which is you in your job, exposes a full spectrum of communication to your client or customer. So let's look at these three sides of the prism and how you bend your business to produce the full spectrum. How do you take your through line and bend it through? So the three sides begin with looking, how you look. How do you look at this industry? How do you look at yourself? And how do you look at your colleagues or your kids? So let's actually begin with looking. I'm going to start with a color test, and I want to see how you see color. So I'm going to give you 15 seconds to look around the room, and I want you to notice everything in the room that is a particular color, and then I'm going to have you close your eyes, and I'm going to test you to see how many places you can remember this color appearing. So here you go. Your color that you're looking for is red, and you have 15 seconds to see if you can memorize all the places behind you, to the side of you, in front of you, maybe in the carpet. So rust and red, anything in that family of orange, rust, and red. What do you see? You've got 10 more seconds. Okay. So now, I'd like you to close your eyes, or if you're not comfortable closing your eyes, you can just look down at your lap, but down enough so that you're not peeking sideways or in front of you. And close your eyes, and I want you to recall everything that you saw in the room that was the color green. You were looking for red, but what was green? So keep your eyes closed. Some of you are actually looking at me, now you're supposed to be your eyes closed. What was green? Was there any green in the room? Maybe you can remember one or two things. See if you can recall 5 things that were green. Okay, so open your eyes. See what you missed. It was obvious, and just turn to the person next to you and say, I can't believe I missed this guy's green shirt. The X matters, that's our whole theme of the meeting here. It's right in the theme. So, what did you miss? Turn to the person next to you, just whisper to them, or I missed that. So what's the point here? The message is that what you're looking for, you're going to see. If you're looking for red, you're going to see red. And if you're looking for green, you're going to find green. And in a world of chaos and confusion, in a moment of crisis, which is what you deal with, when in a way the world looks like the inside of a kaleidoscope. That's how I think of X matters, the inside of a kaleidoscope where everything is shifting in a moment of panic, and people are not sure which colors to look at. You say, green. And then once you finally connect with that person, whether they're in your office or on the phone or the actual customer, the end user, then the next question becomes, in their spectrum of all the things that they're worried about, what's the one thing you really want to talk to them about? And for everyone, it might be different. And the mistake that we make is we communicate, even when we finally have narrowed that one person on the phone, we blather at them with all the things that we think are important that might not be what they think are important. People do this in sales. They just spray all the features and benefits without caring about what that actual person wants to know. So X marks the spot. X matters in that respect. What really matters to the person sitting next to you? What matters to you? What really matters to you? And what's your through line? So let's take a look at how you look at the person sitting next to you, to use that as an example. Often you see someone sitting next to you, maybe you know them because you came from the same company, or maybe you just met them 5 minutes ago or 10 minutes ago before you sat down. But I guarantee you, whoever that is, whether you've known them for 10 years or 10 minutes, you have formed an opinion about them, and you know what they're like. Because we do this, we categorize people. Oh, I know her, she's a blue person. Oh, I know him, he's kind of brown. And what happens to each of us is there are these extraordinary colors, this full spectrum that often we miss. Because we've categorized the person. And that ability to uncover the unexpected color is a great gift and a great resource. And it's a gift, not just to you, but to that other person. So let me give you some context for this. Inside of you, there's a color that I guarantee the person sitting next to you does not know. Maybe you're one of 8 children. Maybe your parent is a Holocaust survivor. Maybe you lost a sibling. Maybe you lived in Africa for a few years. Maybe you were a deadhead, and now you're a corporate bee. My background is, aside from being an artist, is I was an outdoor instructor for a number of years. I used to do these heavy-duty rock climbing, glacial travel, kayaking excursions. I did a 75-day trip in Alaska. People don't expect that. They don't know that when I was in college, I was wearing Birkenstocks and baking banana bread and going to Grateful Dead concerts on campus. Because I'm working in the corporate market. They go, oh really? That's not a color I expected from you. So what's something inside of you that the person sitting next to you might not know? And I want you to think of that. In a moment, we're going to just share them, just with the person sitting next to you. Now, some of you are sitting alone, and this is a world of communication. That's your job. You're in the communication industry. So even though I know some of you would prefer to communicate through a piece of technology than to a human being, in the end, it's all about the human being. So I want to encourage you, and I'm going to challenge you not to leave anyone out who's sitting alone, and not to let anyone not play these games, because you learn by jumping in. It's like the kid growing up who's like, I'll just watch, and you know they're just not having as much fun. It's never as much fun to watch as it is to be in the game. So today is about being in the game. So anyone who's sitting alone, grab them, don't let them sit there, pull them into your group, all right? So here's the first thing we're gonna do is learn the crowd control technique, because there'll be a lot of talk, one of me, many of you, so here's how it works. When I need you to stop talking, I will raise my hand, and that will be your signal to also raise your hand and stop talking. So you're chatting, I need your attention, I raise my hand, you raise your hand, and stop talking. So that way, if someone's back is to the stage, they'll see the hands going up and they'll know to stop. So let's practice that. In your bacon, egg, little sandwich, post-coffee breath voice here, turn to the person next to you and tell them how great their shirt is. Don't leave anyone out. No one's allowed to be in the each other one color about you that they might not know. And as you do this, just keep a little, we call it in the acting world, a third eye. Sort of meaning watching what's going on. Just keep a third eye in what happens in this room, the energy. So turn to the people next to you and just tell them one color. It's not a story, it's a fact. In 15 seconds. Go. Quite a bit of laughter in the room. Part of it's nervousness, you feel kind of weird doing the exercise, but part of it is two other things. Part of it is the joy of sharing a color that you wouldn't normally share in this environment. And part of it's the joy of the person hearing it. They feel privileged to know this about you, and you're sort of surprised, really you? So I did an event like this for 1,800 people from the Department of Defense. It's heavy duty, Pentagon. They were actually military guys with all their medals, and we did this exercise, and the guy who brought me in for this event was more of a clerk position. He was dressed sort of khakis, sort of rumpled shirt, he the guy who has all the pens in his pen protector, kind of walks like this. I always think the way someone moves is indicative of parts of their personality. Like when I coach speakers, part of my job, they come in and say, I really want to be a motivational speaker. So this guy is sort of like this, and it turns out through this exercise that on the weekends he rides Harley motorcycles. And he's got the whole thing, the leather chaps, the vroom vroom. And so we sort of categorize him as this plain vanilla dude. He's got this flaring color inside of him. And so do you. And what this means for you in your jobs, in the actual rooms and offices or connections that you work with, and for your customers and clients, is that people are dying for their colors to come out. For you as parents, I say, let your colors out. Your kids are dying for your colors to come out. They don't want a parent. They want you to pull out that saxophone from the garage and play it. They want you to be you. They want to be inspired by your full expression, that full light. And what this does for you when you learn these colors about someone else, it creates Velcro communication. And you've got the hooks and the loops, and you've got this new bond to someone. And beyond the binds and the bounds of a commodity market, where you've just categorized someone in a particular color, you have this new connection. And all things being equal, people connect to people whose colors they know. You have this new connection. That is so valuable. It's valuable to you. If you're a leader in this room, if you have a team, find out the colors, the hidden colors of the people in your group. Here's a question I like to ask when I work with a client, and I encourage you to use it when you work with a new customer or when you work with a new person. What is it about you that most people wouldn't know? Or, phrased differently, what is it about your industry that most people misunderstand? Or, what's the misconception people have about you? Or about X, this profession? And then listen, because immediately you're out of categorizing them or their industry as the plain vanilla. I come from the acting world, as you heard, and a lot of people think the hardest part about acting is learning lines. That's the misconception. Oh, how do you learn all those lines? I get that all the time. That is the least difficult part. That's just a technicality. Learning lines is like memorizing. The hardest part of acting is aligning your emotional life, the emotional landscape of your entire being with the script, so that when you say the lines, they come out truthfully. If you're the character of Medea, who in Greek tragedy killed her kids, she killed her kids, this character, to take revenge on her husband. Imagine doing that. Imagine killing your kids to take revenge on your spouse. Now, where you have to go is the psychological landscape to pull that up out of yourself. What kind of rage do you have to access? What kind of anger and pain? That's the hard part of acting. That's why I stopped. I didn't want to put myself through that. It's more fun to do comedy for that reason. It is extremely painful to naturally go through that stuff and to live it and to so engross yourself in that world that it's truthful for you. That's hard. So if I gave you a line like, so are you going to be the one? That was the line I gave you. That was your text. That was your script. So are you going to be the one? What if you turned to the person next to you and your scene was, for example, to threaten them? And you just say that line, so are you going to be the one? That's a very different way of saying it than to flirt with them or to encourage them. That's the hard part of acting, making that line come out so truthfully that the audience believes it. So what's the misconception people have about you or your profession? What's the misconception people have about an IT professional? That you're a geek who wears glasses and, wants more CD-ROMs? And how do you change people's perception of that? And you do it by accessing your colors, by letting them see the full spectrum in your own way. So how do you look at yourself? The third part we're looking at. Your industry, colors around you, the person sitting next to you, and yourself. I guarantee that in each of you is a color that you think is wrong. And that color gets in the way of your being the full, expressive, productive person you can be. So here's some examples. Maybe you think you're too fat. Maybe you think you're too skinny. Maybe you think you're too old. Maybe you think you're too young. Maybe you think you've been in this profession too long. Maybe you think you're too new. You haven't been in this profession long enough. You don't know anything. Maybe you've never left America. Or maybe you're a foreigner who's been transplanted here. Maybe you've never been married. Or maybe you've been married 3 times. Maybe you don't have kids. Maybe you have too many kids. But we all have a color that we think is wrong about us, and we use that in a way to shield ourselves from being who we really are, because it becomes an apology. And unconsciously, that color is somehow like a sheen that keeps you from stepping forward into being the greatest you can be. So let me give you some examples for this. I know a woman whose husband had left her when she had a few kids. And that was her liability, this color she thought was wrong. And she would go around telling that story until finally, and this is the challenge with your color that you think is wrong, she changed it and she took what she thought was a liability and she turned it into an asset. So in the beginning, she was always saying, yeah, my husband left me with all these kids to raise, he went for a younger woman. She got a lot of sympathy for that story. She was the victim instead of the victor. And you know what she says now? She took that and she turned it into an asset. And now when someone asks her about her family life, her response, I raised 5 kids on my own. I know a woman from the comedy world that used to be on the same circuit as was I. I was doing comedy on Broadway and in Hollywood. And this woman would come out. She was a very heavy-set blonde woman. And she'd come out and she'd plant herself right here at the center of the stage, which, by the way, in comedy is the moment of truth. Because when you come out on a stage, if you notice, comedy stages are always higher. So you're right at shoe level, and everyone's checking everything from your shoes, to your body, to how you look, and they're trying to assess if you're not Jerry Seinfeld, and if you're not Ellen DeGeneres, they're wondering, you know, what kind of jokes is this person going to tell? Am I going to be offended? Am I going to be put on the spot? And the audience is nervous, and they're sniffing you out. She would just come out here with her blonde hair and her girth, and she would say, I know what you're thinking. Barbie. Yeah. She would get that response from the audience, and she was in because she claimed who she was. Here's one from my personal life. I crossed the age threshold into my 40s, still unmarried by choice. Now, this is a very challenging thing for people to process. It would threaten them. So, I mean, never been married, not once. I mean, really? And you can see the wheels spinning, like, how could you not be married? What have I done? Should I have been married? And, you know, the wheels are wondering, is she gay? Does she have a commitment issue? What's wrong with her? Does she know something about marriage we don't? And, you know, what's Victoria's Secret? And so I used to spend a lot of energy apologizing for my choices, you know, jumping around. I'm sorry, well, you know, that guy Tim, and I almost married him. And by the way, I did get married. I just got married in July, my first marriage. But here's what I used to say. You know, first I would apologize, and then I realized the truth. I took that liability, that wrong color, and I turned it into an asset. And the truth is, and this is my response, and was my response, I skipped my first divorce. And that was the truth. And then the eyes of that person would change, and you could see them thinking, oh, I should have done that. I could have saved a lot of money. So you think, you know, what is the liability that you have in your life, that personal or professional liability, and how do you change that? How do you turn that into an asset and claim it as your own? That's strength. And how do you do that for your clients? So that's looking. Now, let's look at how you do that. I want to give you a few techniques about how you can start to look at a communication setting. How do you start to use all that in a communication setting? So here's the first and most important thing. Any communication setting that you have is most often thought of, especially in your industry, and often in mine as a speaker, presenter, sharer, communicator. We often think of, what is the information I want to convey? I need to convey information. That's what you're in the business of doing, conveying information. But the thing that we forget, and this is so critical, is what's the experience I want the other person to have? So you want to think not just of the information, but of the experience that you're designing. When I teach speaking, I often say, think not just of the information, but what is the dramatic journey you take your audience on? Why do I open with the conveyor belt? 3 reasons. The conveyor belt lets you know I'm not your typical speaker. It lets you know I know a little bit about your industry because it's a customized conveyor belt. And it lets you know that this is going to be different. And that's placed there specifically for that reason. So what is your opening moment when you get on the phone with someone or you start an email? Not just get the information, but what's the experience you take them on? How do they receive that opening line of the email or that phone call or that in-person setting? And how do you end it? When I teach speaking at X Matters, we were talking about this last night because I mentioned it in my presentation with them in March. One of the techniques I teach is when you are presenting, never end on a Q&A. That's how 99% of presentations end, but the problem with ending on a Q&A is it's never good. Because one of 3 things will happen. In a Q&A, either there are too many questions and you can't answer them all, and that looks weird, or there are not any questions, and that makes you look like a bozo. Any questions? Great, okay, well, thanks so much for coming. You feel like a big loser. And that's how you end? Or number 3, some idiot stands up and they don't really have a question. They just want to challenge you and make you look stupid. And they just want to talk. And so you have left your carefully planned presentation up to some idiot who's going to stand up and put you in that position. What a risk. No, you make that Q&A what I call the penultimate, fancy word for just before the end moment. So if you're designing the constellation of your presentation, you have your opening moment, your first moment, you have your final moment, and that final moment should be in line with your through line. If your through line is to inspire people, or to connect people, or to make people realize how lucky they are, or to inspire them to take specific actions, your through line, your final moment, should be a call to action or a call to that inspiration or a call to whatever it is you're trying to instigate and implement and inspire them with. So you do the Q&A and then your final moment, your final funny video, your final line, your final phrase or slide. What is the journey you take someone on? What is the opening moment and the final moment? First and final, and what's the arc? The arc is the transformation. You have to transform them. That's your job. From the opening moment to the final moment, so that when they get off the call, or they finish reading that email, or getting that piece of communication, they feel transformed. That's how scenes in film are structured. Every scene starts and ends in a different place if you watch. A scene starts with a fight, it ends with them in bed together. A scene starts with them in bed together, it ends with a fight. And that's where film is constructed. You have 3 acts in a film, the opening, the middle, second, and the third act. And the opening act ends, the next ends, and the third ends, and all together they take you as the audience and the character through a transformation. So what's the transformation you promise to the characters, your clients? And if you have that in mind, if you see your communication that way, not just as an information dispenser, but say, what's the opening moment, and what's the final moment, and what's the journey I'm taking them on, that intention, that through line, will affect everything. It affects your tone of voice. It affects the rhythm with which you speak. And in the live communication setting, it changes how you set up your office. Whether you greet someone in the hall or you sit behind a desk. Whether you have like this kind of I'm better than you attitude, or whether you're equal, sitting beside a desk at the same issue, here, working together. Intention, your through line, affects behavior. Intention affects behavior. So let me tell you a funny story from the acting world to illustrate this point. When I started doing commercials back in the 1990s in New York City, I had no idea how commercials work. To give you some sense, for every television commercial you see on TV, about 80 actors auditioned. But just to get into that audition category, about 400 were submitted by agents who were trying to get their actor in on the audition. The casting office, the casting director, takes 80 people. 80 people come in over a course of maybe 2 or 3 days. 20 get called back. And 1 gets the job. It's like the Russian roulette. So my first audition ever, I go in and I have no idea what I'm in for. I'm a little nervous. I think it's, what is it? That's Midway Airlines. So I'm in a pinstripe suit, I'm trying to look like a flight attendant, and I get there, and there are all these other women, because in categories, whatever it happens to be, my categories as a woman, everyone who is in my age, height, weight, and look, ethnicity, is there. Because they want heavy, chunky guys. They want blonde brunettes. They want blonde or brunette. So I get there, very nervous. I go down a hall. There are all these other women who look like me, 7 other people on folding metal chairs, and they're just here for that one 15-minute slot. Because every 15 minutes a new group comes in. So I wait there, and one by one the actresses go in, and then eventually my name is called. Victoria Loud, come on in. So I go in. It's a small room, like the size of this stage, this way. There's a bright light, there's a camera, and a poster board that has all the commercial text and copy. Okay, Victoria, why don't you stand behind the white line? Great, and if you could just slate for me, please. I'm sorry, what does slate mean? Just say your name. Victoria LeBon. Great, and could we see your hands? My hands? Now up at the camera. And a profile. Other side. And now if you could take a step back so we could get a full body stand. You're kidding me. And if you could turn around. Okay, cue the poster board text here, it's right here. I got the poster board text, yeah. Okay, let's give it a shot. Here we go. And action. Your ticket, sir. That's it. That is the whole audition. I'm not kidding. I mean, I didn't audition for Thomas's English Muffins. I was to be the mother. The line they gave me for the audition, and crannies. When I did Sex in the City, I arrived for my set of auditions, which were at the tail end of the male auditions, and there was a guy in the episode where I appeared who had just one line. Because he plays this guy in a bar, and Sarah Jessica Parker, the lead, comes in. It's a blind date. She says, "Are you Teddy?" The guy sitting at the bar says, "Sorry." That's the line. And there were many, many, many people there trying to get this one line. But you see how we get categorized, because over here you'll see all these bald-headed chunky men, and they're here for Pepsi AC. Then over here you'll see all these white-haired grandmothers, and they're here for spring. And then over here you'll see all these models with flowing hair, and they're here for finesse shampoo. Now the first callback I ever had was for Denny's, and I was jazzed, because I thought, all right, I'm down out of that 80 into the 20. I'm in. So I show up very excited, thinking it's just going to be that one woman behind the camera. But on a callback, the entire creative team was there. Very intimidating. All these guys behind a desk. So the director comes around. "Hi, I'm John, the director. It's nice to meet you. Let me introduce you around. This is Jim, our client from Denny's. Jeff, our producer for BBDO Advertising. William and David, the 2 writers. And Andy's my son. So why don't you go ahead and slate, and then we'll talk about your work." Victoria LeBon. Okay, listen, we loved what you did the first time, which of course is why we called you back. Let's give it a run through, and we're going to keep it cheerful, all right? Breakfast, Denny's, cheerful. All right, roll camera, here we go. Do you think we're out of our minds to sell Denny's Grand Slam breakfast for just $1.99? Well, now we're 5 times crazier. With 5 new breakfasts for even less, so many breakfasts, so little time. That's good. That's good. What do you think? Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Jeff has a comment. I like the cheerful, but he thinks, and I agree, it needs to be a little more serious. So if you could maybe make it cheerful but stern. I'm sorry, cheerful but stern? Yeah. Give that a go. Roll camera. Here we go. think we're out of our minds to sell Denny's Grand Slam breakfast for just $1.99? Well, now we are 5 times crazier, with 5 new breakfasts for even less. So many breakfasts, so little time. Sorry? Oh, yeah, I forgot. Yeah, totally. Yeah, got it. Okay, forgot to mention, William and David, the writers, put in this great piece into the script where we're going to have 5 arms appearing behind your head, each holding a platter of breakfast food. It's like that Hindu goddess, Shiva. So show us with your eyeballs that you see the platters and keep the cheer from stirring. Have fun, roll camera. Do you think we're out of our minds to sell Denny's Grand Slam breakfast for just $1.99? Well, now we are 5 times crazier, with 5 new breakfasts for even less. So many breakfasts, so little time. It was a mess. I could not do this audition. It kept getting worse.
All right, my son here has a good point. We need to lighten it up a little bit, so if we want to maybe have a giggle. That's it. Yeah, a little giggly, girly giggly thing. You can maybe sprinkle that in wherever you think is appropriate. And because we're selling and, you know, you're a woman, if you could maybe add a little bit of your, you know, just a little, you know, that'd be great. Okay, guys. You got it. Oh, thank you. I had to be a good girl. It was my first callback. I had to behave. Do you think we're out of our minds to sell Denny's Grand Slam breakfast for just $1.99? Well, now you're 5 times crazier, with 5 new breakfasts for even less. So many breakfasts, so little time. I mean, couldn't pull it off. I left the audition feeling like I was not a good actor. I didn't get the job. And I went on to my career, and I did then 27 commercials and auditioned for hundreds more, because for every one you get, you've auditioned for at least 40 or 50. So I worked with many directors, and I realized in retrospect that he was not a great director, because he'd forgotten to tell me the most critical element in directing, in leading, in managing, and I believe in parenting, is the through line. What he really wanted, why we were doing this commercial. Now, had he said to me, your through line, your intention is to charm the viewer, which is really the purpose in this spot, to charm the viewer, all these pieces would have come into place. Charm the viewer? That I could do. Do you think we're out of our minds to sell Denny's Grand Slam breakfast for just $1.99? Well, now we are 5 times crazier, with 5 new breakfasts for even less. So many breakfasts, so little time. So, my question to you is, what's your through line? I mean, truly, what's your through line when you get on the phone? Or you send out an email, or you come into work? Because that through line affects everything. Intention will affect your behavior. It affects the first moment and the final moment. What's the final moment when you're on the phone with someone who's in a panic? Is it, Barry, let me just check this, whatever it is, some technological term. I'll talk to you in 2 minutes. Or is it something much more profound that communicates your through line? Something like, we're with you. We're on top of it. Consider it done. We'll take care of it. We're on your team. You're going to be okay. Those are powerful final lines. And they communicate what could be your through line, though I'm not sure what your individual through lines are. That affects everything. So it is so important for you to connect with people, and that connection is driven by your through line. It's the easiest way to get off the conveyor belt. Say, what's my through line? When you're stressed and panicked, why are we really doing this? That's what matters, and in the end, it's the people. It's what you saw in the video. All the people, what matters to me in their palms? Friends and family, that is the final thing. It's always the people. But we get caught up and we forget that. That's what it's all about. And so to truly connect, to truly, truly be present, to stop time, you have to be a great listener, which is the second piece of our prism. Listening is a magnetic and strange thing, a creative force. The friends who listen to us are the ones who make us unfold and expand. That's not my quote, that's a quote from Carl Menninger, the great psychiatrist. Think about the people in your life who are closest to you. Think of a close friend or a close family member who you truly feel connected to. I guarantee you they're a good listener. We're not close to people who don't listen to us, that listen holistically, and I think that's such an important part of your job, whatever your role is here, to truly, truly listen. Dr. Joyce Brothers said, listening, not imitation, may be the sincerest form of flattery. So if listening is so important, how good a listener are you? "97% of people on a business survey rate listening as one of the top 3 skills to determining your success as a leader or anyone in the company." 97% were rated as one of the top 3 skills. Only 2% of people in corporate America have training in listening skills. In fact, raise your hand if you've ever taken a listening skills course. Oh, well, that's from are you all the help desk people? I thought so. So for those of you who may not have, we're going to do a micro session right now. We're going to do like a 2.5-minute training in listening skills. So here's how it goes. I'm going to designate someone talking by my hand drawing a line in the air. So someone's talking, and the first type of listening is not listening. You just cut the person off. Interrupting. It is so common. It is so common we hardly notice it. But somewhere in your body it registers, and we'll look at that. The second type of listening is what I call pouncing. And that's when you know you're not supposed to interrupt. You've been taught by your spouse, by your kid, by a course maybe, that you shouldn't interrupt. And yet we can't help it. We get excited or we get committed, confused, panicked about our own questions, ideas, comments, concerns, and we just cut the person off right at the second they're done. So we don't interrupt, but we kind of do. Because the second the person is done talking, we jump in with whatever it is we want to say, often unrelated. Completely unrelated to what the topic was they were just discussing. The third type of listening, which when done stops time, is when even though ideas and thoughts and comments and questions are getting triggered, as the person is speaking, you resist the temptation to interrupt or pounce. And then eventually that person takes what I call as a left turn. And all of a sudden, out comes some unexpected piece of information, personal or professional, that you could not have anticipated. You're getting a divorce. They're moving. They're quitting their job. They just inherited money. They just lost money. They've just been diagnosed. And when you have that golden egg in sales, in communication, in life, it's when you really bond. So let's take a look at these 3 types of listening. Interrupting, pouncing, and the third, absorbing, considering, and then responding. Because in this phrase of absorbing, considering, and responding, this phrase of their talking, you have to kind of have that pause when that first person finally reveals that piece of information. Absorb, consider, and then respond, not just jump in. So here we go. We've got the first, interrupting. One of you is going to be A, you're going to find a partner, and one of you is going to be B, so you're not allowed to not play this game, even if you're going to be the observer, C, the kid who doesn't jump in. So, turn to the people next to you, the person behind or in front of you, find a partner, everyone find a partner. One of you is A and one of you is B. You have to play, or at least watch. So some of you have already decided one of you is A and one of you is B. You be A, I'll be B. I'll be B. Here's how you decide. You're going to hold up your thumb, and whoever has more bend in their thumb is A. Okay, excellent. So all the A's, all the bendies of A's, you're going to go first. You're going to ask the person, your partner, the kind of question you would ask in the daily life of your job, a typical question you would ask of a customer. And then about 5 seconds into their response, just cut them off, ask another question, or comment on what they're wearing. Okay? Just 5 seconds in, so give that a go. And yet we do this all the time. And even though I said in the beginning it hardly goes noticed, because it's so common, it does go noticed on some micro level by the person you were talking to with interruption. And if you were to have a camera right on them, and you were to project them on a screen this size, you would see their body just shrink by a 0.5, just a little shrink. And they would feel, if we did a debrief session, like you didn't care, like they weren't important, like what they were saying didn't matter, they would feel derailed, disjointed. And if you really want to make your customers feel connected to you, your clients, your kids, your colleagues, interrupting is not a great way to do it. Let's look at pouncing. We're going to switch B to A. So, A, this time you get to play the customer. B, you're going to play yourself. You're going to ask your partner the kind of question you would ask in your normal day at work. A, with the bent thumb, you answer it, and wrap it up, don't go on too much, just a sentence. And the second they're done, B, just jump in and say something totally unrelated. Ask another question, ask them what time the lunch break is, whatever. Okay? 5 to 10 seconds, go. I've done this exercise with literally hundreds, in fact thousands of people, and the feedback is always it's actually worse than being interrupted. Because you know that the person who was listening wasn't really listening, they just had their own agenda. So what do you do when you have to interrupt? Because sometimes you do, you're on a very time-sensitive situation and issue. You apologize. It's so simple, but we forget to do it. You say, I am so sorry to interrupt you. And then you explain, we have very little time, I just need to make sure you get this piece of information. Or I am so sorry to interrupt you, or whatever your reason. And by apologizing, you diffuse the potential upset. And if you jump in and you interrupt by accident, because you got excited, you apologize for interrupting, I am so sorry I interrupted you, please continue. And their respect for you and their connection with you goes up. And if you need to pounce, which sometimes we do because they're on topic A and it's desperately important you get them to topic B, because you're in a crisis situation, and they're worried about this and you know that that is much more important. You just connect, you create a segue. I learned this doing comedy. You acknowledge where they were, you bring them to where you need them to be, you say, I understand you're concerned about this. I think we just really need to look at that right now. Or I understand you're concerned about this, I will address it after I address that. Because by saying and hearing and acknowledging, you have heard them. They feel received. And this third type, absorbing, considering, and responding, when you have the time to do that, you should do that. And I'll let you do that on your own. It will change your life. If you have a kid who talks slowly, who likes to think things through, wait. And you will finally get the reveal you've been waiting for. How was school? What you doing? Da, da, da. And you're jumping in because you're nervous. Just sit tight and let them unfold. So let's look at the third piece, which is love. And we're going to wrap up with this. Love, and by love, I mean passion. Not just the people in your life, but your life. What's your passion? How do you bring what you love back into work? What music are you listening to on the way to work? If you have a cubicle, if you have an office, what decorates it? How do you create an environment that you love to be in? Do you have achy overhead fluorescent lighting, or do you have a pool table there? If you love motorcycles, why don't you have motorcycle pictures on the wall? If you love drumming, why don't you have 2 drumsticks on your desk? Drumming between phone calls. Your colleague comes in and says, "I'm your drummer, my son's a drummer," and all of a sudden you have Velcro communication. You have to bring those things into work that you love. Fuse the two. I say, razz your band. Life is too short not to. Like I said earlier, your kids are dying for you to take out that French horn. Don't leave it in the closet. Because when you do what you love, time stops. There's a great quote by C.W. Runyon. We don't stop playing because we grow old. We don't stop playing because we grow old. We grow old because we stop playing. Because you're in an emergency crisis environment doesn't mean you have to live your life on the conveyor belt of crisis. You can bring in passion. And life is, you know better than anyone else, can go at any moment. I watched 9/11 from my windows in Lower Manhattan, and 2 days later, 2 days after 9/11, with smoke coming into my windows and a tag in front of my building, I had to have ID to get into my home. My mother's diagnosed with pancreatic cancer. And she's gone in a matter of months. Life is like this. So what are you waiting for? Years ago, I went out onto Park Avenue to celebrate life, to say, this is what I love. I love silliness and celebration. And so I went out with a boombox and a film crew. And this is what I did. We have our tech crew out here. Can you about the film? Oh, here it is. Yes, life is crazy, busy, and yes, it is stressful, and you deal with that on a daily basis. but it is still an incredible life, and you will not have it forever. So I encourage you to stop, to look, to listen, and to love. To look not just for red, but to look for green. To ask the right questions. To remember to truly listen, to not compete over who is crazier and who is busier. These themes, I think, are so important. If you want to get them, we'll email them to you. This is a PDF. It has all the key themes we talked about: stopping time, planning your first and final moments. If you want that, I'll send it to you. Just leave your business card on the desk, and we'll send it to you. And as a special treat, X Matters got you each this, which is my minute book. I think, who wants to read a 276-page hardbound book? You don't have the time. So what if I could create a mini book that had all the key themes from today? So X Matters, big round of applause for them, got you each one of these. I think in a way, the most important message, though, is that you are so often the underappreciated heroes. And it's worth remembering how much value you bring. If you were to look at your life from the moon, and you were to look at the nobility behind your work, what you do is so important. At the worst, it's a loss of life. I mean, the least of it is inconvenience, bad information. The worst is a loss of life. And what more important role could you have than that? So I encourage you to remember to reconnect with that through line. Whatever that is for you, that's why you do what you do. It is so important. Our lives are about to go at any moment, and we saw that with Steve Jobs. And there is a beautiful tribute to him on the White House website. And I want to read a section of it for you, because I think, in an interesting way, it's what you do. And this is just an excerpt. What Obama wrote: Steve was among the greatest of American innovators, brave enough to think differently, bold enough to believe he could change the world, and talented enough to do it. By building one of the planet's most successful companies from his garage, he exemplified the spirit of American engineering. By making computers personal and putting the internet in our pockets, he made the information revolution not only accessible, but intuitive and fun. I think you can do that. And by turning his talents to storytelling, he has brought joy to millions of children and grown-ups alike. Steve was fond of saying that he lived every day like it was his last. Because he did, he transformed our lives. He redefined entire industries and achieved one of the rarest feats in human history. He changed the way each of us sees the world. And I think you can do that. I think you can change the way each of your customers sees the world. I think that's our job. That's my job. It's all of our jobs. To be present and to stop time. And I know you're the underappreciated heroes, but I want to leave you with this thought. Sometimes you might have a killer phone call, you handle the job just right, you send just the right information, and no one is there to acknowledge you. So this is what you do. It comes from my great friend, Michael Hoffman. He works on his own, but every now and then when he has a great phone call, he hangs up the phone, he turns to the empty office, and he says, "That, ladies and gentlemen, is how it's done." Thank you so much for having me.